Grant Mercer's world stopped the moment she walked through that restaurant door. Not because she was beautiful, though she was, not because she smiled at him with warmth, though she did, but because the woman approaching his table was impossible. She had his dead wife's face, the same crystalline blue eyes that had closed forever 3 years ago, the same dimple that appeared when she smiled, the smile he'd buried with Elise. Grant's chest constricted, his vision tunneled. This couldn't be real. Ghost didn't make reservations at Italian bistros. Yet here she stood, extending her hand, saying a name that wasn't Elise. What the hell was happening? Before we dive into this incredible true story, please stay with me until the end. And drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. The fluorescent lights of Romano's Italian kitchen cast a warm golden glow across the checkered tablecloths, creating an atmosphere of casual intimacy that made Grant Mercer want to crawl out of his skin. He sat rigidly in the corner booth, his fingers drumming an anxious rhythm against the worn wooden table, checking his watch for the 4th time in as many minutes. 6:47 p.m. She was late. Good. Maybe she wouldn't show at all. Grant exhaled slowly, trying to calm the tremor in his hands. This entire thing had been Marcus's idea, his best friend and self-appointed life coach who'd decided that 3 years of widowhood was long enough to wallow and that Grant needed to get back out there before you forget how to talk to women entirely. I don't want to get back out there, Grant had protested last Tuesday, when Marcus had cornered him at the construction site where they both worked. I'm fine. Mia's fine. We have a routine. A routine isn't a life, brother. Marcus had fixed him with that penetrating stare that always made Grant feel like he was being x-rayed. You're 34, not 84. Elise wouldn't want you living like a monk. The invocation of his late wife's name had been the killing blow, as Marcus knew it would be, because the bastard was right. Elise, with her boundless optimism and fierce love of life, would have been furious to see Grant shuffling through existence like a ghost himself, going through motions but never really living. So he'd agreed. One blind date. Just to prove to Marcus, and maybe to himself, that he'd tried. Now, sitting here alone, Grant wondered if the universe was giving him an out. Maybe this Lena Ward person had taken one look at his profile picture and decided she had better things to do on a Friday night than have dinner with a grieving widower who worked construction and had a 6-year-old daughter. He wouldn't blame her. Grant picked up the menu for the 3rd time, not actually seeing the words, just needing something to do with his hands. The restaurant hummed with life around him, couples leaning close over candlelit tables, families with boisterous children, a group of college kids laughing too loudly in the back corner. Everyone seemed to know their place in the world. Everyone except him. The front door opened. Grant glanced up out of habit, then his entire body went rigid. No. The woman who entered moved with an easy grace, scanning the restaurant with a slight smile playing at her lips. She wore a simple navy dress that fell just below her knees, her light brown hair pulled back in a loose ponytail, a few strands framing her face. She looked exactly like someone comfortable in her own skin, the kind of person who made friends easily and laughed often. She looked exactly like Elise. Grant's menu slipped from his fingers, clattering against the table. Several nearby diners glanced over, but he barely noticed. His heart had kicked into overdrive, pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat, behind his eyes, in his fingertips gripping the table edge. This isn't possible. But there she was. The same heart-shaped face, the same crystalline blue eyes that had haunted his dreams for 3 years, the same elegant slope of her nose, the same full lips that curved upward naturally, as if joy was her default setting. Even the way she tilted her head slightly as she searched the crowd. It was Elise's gesture, the one she'd made 1,000 times when looking for him in a crowd. The woman's eyes found his. Her smile brightened, and she raised her hand in a small wave. Grant couldn't breathe. Literally couldn't draw air into his lungs. The restaurant seemed to spin around him, sounds becoming muffled and distant. This was shock. He recognized it from that horrible day at the hospital, when the doctor had said words that didn't make sense. Brain aneurysm. So sudden. Nothing we could do. The woman, Lena, his brain supplied helplessly, began walking toward his table. Each step brought her closer, and with each step, Grant's panic intensified. Details emerged that his shock-frozen brain cataloged with mechanical precision. The same slight asymmetry to her smile, the left side rising just a fraction higher than the right, the same delicate bone structure of her wrists and hands, the same way her eyes crinkled at the corners when she smiled, but also differences. Her hair was longer than Elise ever wore hers, and a shade darker. She was maybe an inch taller. Her style was different. Elise had favored bright colors and flowing fabrics, while this woman's navy dress was more tailored, more conservative. None of it mattered. The similarities were impossible, overwhelming, wrong. "Grant?" She was at his table now, her voice warm and slightly uncertain. Even her voice, that clear melodic tone that had once whispered, "I love you," in the darkness of their bedroom. "I'm Lena Ward. I'm so sorry I'm late. Traffic was insane on the bridge." Grant stared up at her, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly like a landed fish. He should stand. He should shake her hand. He should say something, anything that resembled normal human interaction. Instead, he lurched to his feet so violently that his chair scraped backward with a harsh screech. I can't. Excuse me. Grant, are you okay?" Lena's smile faded, replaced by concern. She reached out instinctively, one hand extending toward him. He flinched backward like she'd tried to strike him. Hurt flashed across her face, quickly followed by confusion. Did I do something wrong?" No, The words wouldn't come. His throat had closed up entirely. The walls were pressing in. He needed air. He needed space. He needed this not to be happening. "I'm sorry. I have to go." The words came out strangled, barely audible. Grant grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair, his movements jerky and uncoordinated. His knee banged against the table leg, sending water glasses sloshing dangerously close to their edges. "Wait, I don't understand." Lena's voice followed him, bewildered and hurt. But Grant was already moving, threading through tables with single-minded desperation. Other diners stared openly now. He didn't care. Nothing mattered except getting out, getting away from that face, those eyes, that impossible resurrection of everything he'd buried and mourned and finally learned to live without. The cool October air hit him like a slap when he burst through the restaurant doors. Grant stumbled to his truck, parked 3 spaces down in the small lot. His hand shook so badly it took 3 tries to get the key in the lock. Old habits. He'd never upgraded to a key fob. Elise had always teased him about his grandpa truck. Elise. The name in his mind broke something loose. Grant wrenched the door open, climbed into the driver's seat, and slammed the door behind him. Then, alone in the enclosed space that still faintly smelled of his daughter's fruity shampoo and old coffee, he fell apart. Great, wrenching sobs tore through him, the kind he hadn't allowed himself since the funeral. He'd been so careful, so controlled around Mia, always the strong daddy who had it together, who could braid hair and make pancakes and kiss scraped knees. He'd locked his grief away in a box marked "Deal with Later," and later had never come. Until now. Until a stranger with his dead wife's face had smiled at him across a restaurant. Grant pressed his forehead against the steering wheel, his shoulders heaving. Was he losing his mind? Had grief finally cracked something essential in his brain? People didn't just look like each other with that level of detail. Not strangers. Not without some connection, some explanation. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Marcus, probably, wondering how the date was going. Grant ignored it. He ignored the second buzz and the third. He couldn't talk to anyone right now. Couldn't explain what had just happened because he didn't understand it himself. Time passed. He wasn't sure how much. Could have been 5 minutes or 50. Eventually, the sobs subsided into hiccuping breaths, then into a hollow numbness that felt almost worse than the panic. A sharp rap on the window nearly sent Grant through the roof. He jerked his head up to find Marcus peering through the driver's side window, his dark face creased with worry. Behind him, the restaurant's neon sign painted everything in shades of red and blue. "Grant, open the door, man!" For a moment, Grant considered starting the truck and driving away. But Marcus would just follow him home, and then Mia would see him like this, wrecked and red-eyed and useless. He unlocked the door. Marcus yanked it open and took one look at Grant's face. Jesus Christ, what happened? Did she say something? Do something? She looked like Elise. The words came out flat, emotionless. Marcus blinked. What? The woman, Lena. She looks exactly like Elise. Grant's voice cracked on his wife's name. Same face, same eyes, same smile. Everything. Brother, that's not... People can look similar, sure, but... No. Grant cut him off, his voice rising. Not similar. Identical. Marcus, I'm not exaggerating. I thought I was seeing a ghost. I thought I'd lost my mind. I still don't know if I have. Marcus stared at him for a long moment, his expression shifting from concern to something deeper. Alarm, maybe, or disbelief. Grant, listen to me. You're in shock. Grief can make us see things that aren't really... I'm not hallucinating. Grant slammed his palm against the steering wheel. She's in there right now. Go look for yourself if you don't believe me. Okay. Marcus held up both hands in a placating gesture. I believe you. I'm just saying there's got to be an explanation, a rational one. Yeah? What is it? Because I'm fresh out of rational explanations for why my dead wife's doppelganger just tried to have dinner with me. Marcus was quiet for a moment, thinking. Then, did you talk to her? Ask her anything about herself? I ran away like a coward before she could finish introducing herself. Okay, not helpful. Marcus rubbed his jaw, the way he always did when working through a problem. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go inside and talk to her. Explain that you had a medical emergency or something. Get her contact information if I can. Why? Because maybe if we actually talk to her like adults instead of fleeing into the night, we'd find out she's got a perfectly normal explanation for looking like Elise. Maybe they're, I don't know, distant cousins or something. Grant wanted to argue, but he was too exhausted, too emotionally wrung out to fight. Fine. Do whatever. Marcus squeezed his shoulder. Stay here. I'll be back. Grant watched his friend jog back toward the restaurant, then let his head fall back against the headrest. The numbness was spreading, which was good. Numbness was better than feeling. His phone buzzed again. This time he checked it. 3 texts from Marcus sent before he'd shown up. How's it going? She cute? Dude, are you actually talking to her or just texting me? And one from his mother. Don't forget, Mia has ballet at 9 tomorrow. Her pink leotard is clean. Right. Mia, his 6-year-old daughter, who'd been so excited when Grandma picked her up for their overnight, announcing that Daddy's going on a date with a lady. Ballet tomorrow. Parent-teacher conference on Wednesday. Permission slip for the field trip due Friday. Normal life. The life he'd rebuilt from ashes. The life he couldn't afford to let crumble because the universe had decided to play a sick joke on him. Grant pulled himself together with visible effort, wiping his eyes with his jacket sleeve. He looked like hell in the rearview mirror, red-rimmed eyes, splotchy face, hair sticking up where he'd run his hands through it. Whatever. He'd looked worse. The month after Elise died, he'd looked worse every single day. 15 minutes later, Marcus emerged from the restaurant. His expression was strange. Concerned, yes, but also something else. Something that made Grant's stomach clench with fresh anxiety. His friend climbed into the passenger seat, which was littered with Mia's forgotten toys and snack wrappers. He didn't seem to notice. Well, Grant demanded. What did she say? Marcus turned to face him directly. Grant, I need you to stay calm. Oh God, what? I talked to her. Lena, you're right. She does look remarkably like Elise. I can see why you freaked out. Thank you for validating my mental breakdown. What else? Marcus took a deep breath. She told me something about why she agreed to this blind date in the first place. Because my profile said emotionally damaged widow with baggage and she's into fixer-uppers? Grant, listen. Marcus gripped his shoulder. She said she's been looking for her sister for the past 5 years. Her twin sister. They were separated when they were 3 years old, some kind of custody situation gone wrong. She only recently got access to the records. Her sister's name was changed by the father who took her. She was adopted, then later... The words hung in the air between them, too enormous to fully process. Later what? Grant's voice came out barely above a whisper. Later she married a man named Grant Mercer and took his last name. She died 3 years ago from a brain aneurysm. The truck spun. The world spun. Grant gripped the door handle like it was the only thing tethering him to reality. Elise, he breathed. Elise had a twin sister. That's what she's been trying to figure out. That's why she's been going on these blind dates, hoping to find someone who knew her sister, who could tell her what happened to her, where she'd been all those years they were apart. Grant's mind reeled through memories like a deck of shuffled cards. Elise, who'd always been vague about her early childhood, who'd said she didn't remember much before age 7 or 8, that trauma could do that to memory, who'd been raised by an aunt after her parents died, or so she'd said, who'd never had any family at their wedding except that aunt, elderly and distant, who'd passed away herself 2 years later. He'd never questioned it. Why would he? Everyone had complicated family histories. Elise had been so full of life and light and love that her murky past had seemed irrelevant. This is insane, Grant said. But even as he said it, pieces were clicking into place with sickening clarity. How did Lena find me? How did Marcus even set up this date? Marcus winced. Pure coincidence. My cousin Sarah works with Lena at the hospital. She's a social worker there. She mentioned Lena was new in town, and I thought... He trailed off. Grant, I swear I had no idea. Sarah didn't know about Elise. She only started at the firm 6 months ago. So we're supposed to believe that what? The universe just randomly arranged for me to go on a date with my dead wife's twin sister? The sister she didn't even know she had? I don't know what we're supposed to believe. But Lena's still in there, and she's crying, and she's asking if she can talk to you. She says she has questions about Elise, about her life. Every instinct Grant had screamed at him to start the truck and drive away. To go home, collect Mia from his mother's, and pretend this night had never happened. To protect the careful, contained life he'd built from this hurricane of impossibility. But another part of him, the part that had loved Elise with everything in him, that still whispered to her picture on the nightstand some nights, that part knew he owed her this. If she'd had a sister out there searching for her, if that sister had questions about the life Elise had lived, I can't, Grant said. Not tonight. I can't do this tonight. Okay. That's okay. Marcus pulled out his phone. I got her number. When you're ready, if you're ready, you can call her. No pressure. Grant took the slip of paper Marcus offered, staring at the numbers written in his friend's blocky handwriting. Below them, Lena Ward. Says she understands if you never call. She was crying? Grant asked quietly. Yeah, pretty hard. I think this whole thing rattled her as much as it rattled you. She kept saying she didn't mean to upset you, that she had no idea the man Sarah was setting her up with had been married to her sister. Guilt joined the swirl of emotions churning in Grant's gut. He'd run out on her, left her sitting alone in a restaurant, probably feeling humiliated and confused. And she'd been crying, processing her own shock, her own grief for a sister she'd searched for but found too late. I'm an asshole, Grant muttered. You're a man who saw his dead wife's face and panicked. That's not being an asshole, that's being human. Marcus squeezed his shoulder again. Go home, process this, call her when and if you're ready. But Grant, I think you should call her. I think Elise would want you to. Grant barked out a laugh that held no humor. Elise would want a lot of things. Yeah, for me to keep living, to find happiness again, to give Mia a stable home. I don't think have dinner with my secret twin was on that list. No, but knowing her, knowing how much she valued family, Marcus shrugged. Just think about it. They sat in silence for a moment longer. Then Marcus climbed out of the truck, knocking twice on the roof before heading to his own vehicle. Grant stared at the paper in his hand. 10 digits. A doorway to answers, to closure, to potentially understanding parts of Elise's life that had remained mysteries. Or a doorway to more pain, more confusion, more reminders of everything he'd lost. He carefully folded the paper and slipped it into his wallet, behind Elise's driver's license photo that he'd never been able to throw away. Then he started the truck and drove home, through streets that seemed darker than usual, under a moon that offered no guidance. The house was empty when he arrived. Blessedly, mercifully empty. No daughter asking how his date went. No mother offering knowing smiles and relationship advice. Just silence. And ghosts. And questions with no good answers. Grant poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey and sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing, thinking about everything. Somewhere in this same city, a woman who looked exactly like his wife was probably doing the same thing. Two strangers bound by an impossible connection, separated by grief and shock and the cruelty of coincidence. He should call her. He should apologize. He should ask the thousand questions crowding his mind. But not tonight. Tonight he just needed to sit with the truth that Elise had had a twin sister. That somewhere in her lost, forgotten childhood, there had been another little girl with the same face, the same eyes, the same smile. A sister who'd been searching, who'd finally found what she was looking for, only to discover she was 3 years too late. Grant raised his glass to the picture of Elise on the refrigerator, the two of them at the beach, Mia as a toddler between them, all three grinning at the camera like they had forever ahead of them. "You had a sister," he whispered to the frozen image. "Why didn't you tell me? What else didn't I know?" The picture, of course, offered no answers. Only Elise's smile, bright and mysterious, keeping its secrets even in death. Grant drained his whiskey and poured another, settling in for what promised to be a very long night. The whiskey didn't help. Grant discovered this around 2 in the morning, staring at his bedroom ceiling with the kind of clarity that only comes from exhaustion and emotional overload. Sleep was impossible. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her, them, Elise and Lena, their faces superimposed in his mind until he couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. He gave up trying around 4 and moved to the living room, pulling out the old photo albums he kept in the bottom drawer of the entertainment center. Albums he hadn't opened in over a year because looking at Elise's face had finally stopped feeling like a knife to the chest. Now he studied every picture with new eyes, searching for clues he'd missed. Elise at their wedding, radiant in white. Elise pregnant with Mia, glowing and laughing. Elise holding their newborn daughter for the first time, tears streaming down her face. In every image, she was alone. No parents, no siblings, just that elderly aunt who'd passed away before Mia turned 2. Grant traced his finger over a photo from their honeymoon in Myrtle Beach. Elise stood on the sand, arms outstretched to the ocean, her face tilted toward the sun. He remembered that moment perfectly. She'd turned to him and said, "I feel so free. Like I could be anyone, do anything." At the time, he'd thought she meant free from the stress of wedding planning. Now he wondered if she'd meant something deeper, free from a past she couldn't fully remember, from a childhood fractured by separation and loss. Had she known? Deep down, had some part of her remembered a twin sister? The questions circled endlessly, offering no answers. Dawn broke gray and cold. Grant showered, dressed, and was halfway through his first pot of coffee when his mother's car pulled into the driveway at 7:30. Through the window, he watched Mia bounce out of the passenger seat, still in her pajamas, clutching the overnight bag covered in unicorn stickers. He pasted on a smile and opened the door before they reached it. "Daddy!" Mia launched herself at him with the full-body enthusiasm only a 6-year-old could muster. Grant caught her, swinging her up despite the warning twinge in his lower back. "Hey, Princess, did you have fun with Grandma?" "We watched 3 movies and ate popcorn for dinner, and she let me stay up until 10 o'clock. Mia announced this last part with such reverence that Grant had to suppress a laugh. 10 whole o'clock, huh? That's pretty late." "I know!" Mia wriggled out of his arms and ran inside, already chattering about the movies and the popcorn, and how Grandma's cat had slept on her feet all night. His mother, Patricia Mercer, climbed the porch steps more slowly. She was 63, but looked younger, her silver hair cut in a stylish bob, her sharp eyes missing nothing. Those eyes studied Grant now with the precision of a woman who'd raised 3 boys and could spot trouble from a mile away. "You look like hell," she said bluntly. "Good morning to you too, Mom." "Don't good morning me." "What happened?" She brushed past him into the kitchen, immediately moving to pour herself coffee like she owned the place. In many ways she did. She'd been Grant's lifeline after Elise died, stepping in to help with Mia while he figured out how to be both parents at once. Nothing happened. The date was fine. Patricia turned to fix him with a look that had withered stronger men than him. "Grant Alexander Mercer, I've known you for 34 years. I was there when you came into this world screaming bloody murder, and I'll be there when you leave it. Don't you dare lie to my face." Grant sagged against the counter. "Can we not do this right now? Mia's in her room, changing for ballet like I suggested." His mother crossed her arms. "You've got about 5 minutes before she comes bouncing back in here. Talk." So he did. Not everything. Not the whiskey or the crying or the hours spent staring at old photos, but enough. The woman who looked like Elise, the panic attack, Marcus's revelation about the twin sister. Patricia listened without interrupting, her expression shifting from concern to shock to something softer, sadder. When Grant finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "That poor girl," she finally said. "Which one?" "Both of them." Patricia shook her head. Elise, growing up not knowing she had a sister, and this Lena, searching all these years only to find out she was too late. She reached out and squeezed Grant's hand. "But also, my son. Because this isn't fair to you either." "I don't know what to do, Mom." "Do you have her number?" Grant nodded. "Then I think you know what you need to do. You need to call her. Not for yourself, for Elise. She deserves to have her story known, her life remembered by the sister who lost her." "I can't. Every time I think about seeing her again, it feels like you're betraying Elise's memory by moving on with your life." Patricia's voice was gentle but firm. "Grant, honey, we've talked about this. Elise wouldn't want you frozen in grief forever." "This isn't about moving on," Grant protested. "This is about... I don't even know what this is about. It's too much, too complicated." "Life is complicated. Death is complicated. But running away from both doesn't make them any less so." She patted his cheek, a gesture she'd been doing since he was Mia's age. "Think about it. And maybe think about what Mia would want to know about her mother's family." Mia. Grant hadn't even considered how this might affect his daughter. She'd been 3 when Elise died, old enough to remember her mother in fragments, in feelings rather than concrete memories. She had so few people who could tell her stories about her mom. An aunt, a blood relative, could be what? A blessing? A curse? Another complication in an already complicated life? "I'm ready," Mia announced, bounding back into the kitchen in her pink leotard and tutu. "Can we get donuts after ballet? Please, please, please?" "We'll see," Grant said automatically, his mind still churning. "Go brush your teeth and grab your ballet bag." As Mia thundered back down the hallway, Patricia gathered her purse. "I've got my book club this afternoon, but call me if you need anything." "And Grant? Don't wait too long. Some doors close if you don't walk through them when they're open." After his mother left, Grant went through the motions of a normal Saturday, ballet class, where Mia pirouetted with more enthusiasm than grace, lunch at their favorite diner where Mia covered her pancakes in enough syrup to send her into a sugar coma, playground time, where she made friends with every child within a 20-foot radius, while Grant sat on a bench, his phone burning a hole in his pocket. The slip of paper with Lena's number had migrated from his wallet to his jeans pocket. He pulled it out and smoothed it flat against his thigh approximately 70 times that day, never quite finding the courage to dial. By the time he tucked Mia into bed that night, after dinner, bath time, 3 stories, and 2 glasses of water, Grant had convinced himself he wasn't going to call. It was too weird, too painful, too much to ask of himself or this stranger who happened to share his late wife's DNA. But then Mia said something that changed everything. "Daddy?" Her voice was small in the darkness of her room, barely audible over the butterfly nightlight's gentle hum. "Yeah, Princess? Do you think Mommy had a family? Before us, I mean." Grant's breath caught. "What makes you ask that?" "Lucy at school was talking about her grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles and cousins. She said everyone has a big family." Mia rolled over to face him, her eyes reflecting the nightlight's glow. "But I only have you and Grandma Pat and Uncle Marcus. Did Mommy not have a family? How did you explain to a 6-year-old that her mother's past was a mystery, that sometimes families were complicated and broken and lost?" "Your mommy had us," Grant said carefully. "She loved us more than anything in the whole world." "But before?" Mia persisted with a child's single-minded focus. "Before she met you? Did she have a mommy and daddy?" "I think so, baby, but they're not with us anymore." "Oh." Well, Mia processed this with the solemn gravity children brought to discussions of death and loss. Then, "Do you think they're in heaven with Mommy? Do you think she knows them now?" Grant's throat tightened. "I think if anyone deserves to be happy in heaven, it's your Mommy." "Yeah," Mia smiled sleepily. I bet she has lots of friends there. Mommy always made friends with everyone. She did. Elise had possessed that rare gift of making every person she met feel seen, valued, important. Cashiers and CEOs, children and elderly neighbors. She'd treated them all with the same warmth. After Mia finally drifted off, Grant stood in her doorway for a long time watching his daughter sleep. She was getting so big. In another year, she'd lose her first tooth, start reading chapter books, maybe stop believing in the tooth fairy and Santa Claus. Time was moving forward, whether Grant was ready or not. And didn't Mia deserve to know the truth about her mother? Didn't she deserve the chance to meet an aunt who carried Elise's genes, who might be able to answer questions about where certain traits came from, why Mia had her particular shade of blue eyes, or her specific pattern of freckles? Grant pulled out his phone before he could change his mind. In the kitchen, with only the stove light for illumination, he unfolded the paper and stared at the numbers. His finger hovered over the screen for what felt like hours, but was probably only seconds. Then he dialed. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Grant was about to hang up, relief and disappointment warring in his chest, when the line connected. Hello? The voice was uncertain, soft, painfully familiar. Lena? This is Grant Mercer from last night. I wanted to... The words tangled in his throat. Grant. She sounded surprised, maybe hopeful. I didn't think you'd call. I didn't think I would either, he admitted. But we should talk. About Elise. About everything. Yes. The word came out in a rush, laden with emotion. Yes, I'd really like that. I have so many questions, and I know this must be incredibly difficult for you, and I'm so sorry for how things went last night. Don't apologize, Grant interrupted. None of this is your fault. It's just a lot. It is, Lena agreed quietly. It's a lot for both of us. They were silent for a moment, the phone line crackling softly between them. Grant heard what sounded like traffic in the background on her end. She was outside somewhere, maybe walking. Are you free tomorrow? He asked before he could overthink it. We could meet. Somewhere public, somewhere neutral, just to talk. Tomorrow would be good. Thank you, Grant, for calling, for being willing to do this. My daughter asked me tonight if her mother had a family, Grant said, not entirely sure why he was sharing this. I couldn't give her a real answer. I think she deserves one. Your daughter, Lena's voice went even softer. What's her name? Mia. She's 6. Does she... Lena hesitated. Does she remember Elise? Some. Fragments, mostly. She was 3 when... He couldn't finish the sentence. I'm so sorry for all of you. Lena cleared her throat. There's a park on Riverside near the waterfront. Willowbrook Park. Do you know it? I do. What time? 2 o'clock. That way, if it goes well, we have time to talk. And if it doesn't, we can leave, Grant finished. 2 o'clock works. After they hung up, Grant stood in his kitchen for a long time, phone still clutched in his hand, trying to process what he'd just committed to. Tomorrow he would sit down with a stranger who wore his dead wife's face and have a conversation about things he'd never had to confront before. The thought terrified him. But there was something else underneath the fear, a strange sense of inevitability, like this meeting had always been coming, written in stars he'd been too blind to read. Sleep came eventually, fitful and full of dreams where Elise and Lena blurred together until Grant couldn't tell them apart. He woke Sunday morning feeling like he'd been in a fight, every muscle tense, his head pounding. Mia bounded into his room at 7, full of energy and demands for waffles. Grant went through the morning routine on autopilot, breakfast, cartoons, letting her help fold laundry by creating more chaos than assistance. Normal Sunday things that felt surreal given what the afternoon held. At 1:30, his mother arrived to watch Mia. Grant had called her that morning, explaining what he was about to do. Patricia had simply said, "Good," and promised to be there. "I want to come," Mia protested when Grant explained he had to go out for a while. "This is grown-up stuff, Princess, but Grandma brought supplies for making cookies." Mia's protests evaporated at the mention of cookies. Grant kissed the top of her head, grabbed his jacket, and headed out before his courage could fail. The drive to Willowbrook Park took 20 minutes through Sunday afternoon traffic. Grant arrived 15 minutes early and sat in his truck watching people walk by, couples holding hands, families with strollers, dogs pulling their owners toward the duck pond. Normal people living normal lives, unburdened by impossible coincidences. At exactly 2 o'clock, he saw her. Lena sat on a bench near the fountain, wearing jeans and a cream-colored sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She was looking down at her hands, her knee bouncing with nervous energy. Grant's chest constricted, but this time he was prepared for it. This time he breathed through the initial shock. He climbed out of the truck and walked toward her. She looked up when he was about 10 feet away, and Grant saw the exact moment she recognized him. Her expression flickered through several emotions too quickly to name before settling on something that looked like cautious hope. "Hi," she said as he approached. "You came." "I said I would." Grant stood awkwardly, unsure of the protocol here. Did they shake hands? Hug? Maintain distance? Lena seemed equally uncertain. She gestured to the bench. "Sit?" He sat, leaving a careful foot of space between them. Up close, in daylight, he could see the differences more clearly. Lena's skin had a few more freckles than Elise's had. Her eyebrows were slightly fuller. There was a small scar on her chin that Elise never had. These details should have made it easier, but somehow they made it harder, like looking at an alternate reality version of his wife. "Thank you for meeting me," Lena said softly. "I know this must be incredibly strange for you." Strange doesn't quite cover it," Grant admitted. "But I think we both deserve answers, or at least to try to piece together what happened." Lena nodded. She pulled out her phone and opened the photo app, then hesitated. "Can I show you something? It might be, difficult." "Everything about this situation is difficult. Show me." She turned the phone so he could see the screen. The photo was old, faded at the edges, showing 2 identical toddlers sitting on a porch step. They wore matching yellow dresses and huge grins, their arms wrapped around each other. They couldn't have been more than 2 or 3 years old. Grant's breath caught. The resemblance to Mia at that age was unmistakable. "That's us," Lena said quietly. "Me and my sister. It's one of the only photos I have from before we were separated." "What happened?" Grant asked, unable to look away from those 2 little girls who had no idea their lives were about to fracture. "Our parents split when we were 3. Messy divorce, apparently. Dad took one of us, Mom kept the other. Then Mom died in a car accident when I was 5, and I went into foster care. By the time I was old enough to start asking questions, everyone involved was either dead or had moved on. The records were sealed. It took me years and a lawyer to finally get access to what little information existed. And you found out your sister's name had been changed. Elise Marie Hudson became Elise Marie Hughes when my dad remarried and his new wife adopted her. Then she took your name when you married." Lena's voice was steady, but Grant could hear the weight beneath the words. "I didn't even know if she was alive. I'd been searching for Elise Hudson, not Elise Mercer. It wasn't until I hired a private investigator 3 months ago that I found the death certificate." Grant's hands clenched into fists on his knees. "She never knew. About you." "I don't think so. Based on what I've learned, my dad told her I died in the same accident as our mother. It was cleaner that way, I guess. No messy custody battles, no child asking about her sister." "Jesus Christ." Grant scrubbed his hands over his face. He had no right to take that from either of you. He died 8 years ago, liver failure, so I can't exactly ask him why." Lena's voice held carefully controlled anger. "But I've spent the last 5 years trying to find my sister, going through databases, social media, anything I could think of. I moved here 6 months ago because the last address I had for Elise Hughes was in this state. I thought maybe I'd get lucky, find someone who knew her. And instead Marcus's cousin set you up on a blind date with her widower." "Yeah." Lena let out a shaky laugh. "Not exactly what I had in mind." They sat in silence for a moment, watching a young boy chase ducks near the pond while his parents laughed. Normal life carrying on around them. "Tell me about her," Lena said suddenly. "Please. I need to know what kind of life she had, if she was happy." Grant wasn't sure where to start. How did you summarize someone's entire existence? But he tried. "She was happy," he said finally. "At least I think she was. We met in college. She was studying to be a teacher. I was in the construction management program. She literally ran into me in the library, knocked a whole stack of books out of my hands. She was so embarrassed, helped me pick them all up, and then we ended up talking for 3 hours about nothing and everything. Lena smiled, and Grant's heart twisted because it was Elise's smile, warm and genuine. That sounds like something she'd do. Based on the few memories I have, or think I have, she was always moving, always laughing. That was Elise exactly. She couldn't sit still. Always had a project, always planning something. Our house was chaos in the best way. Grant's voice caught. She wanted to teach kindergarten, said those were the years that mattered most, when you could still shape how a kid saw the world. Did she? Teach, I mean. For 2 years before Mia was born, she was planning to go back once Mia started school, but he didn't finish, didn't need to. Can you tell me how it happened? Lena asked gently. You don't have to, but brain aneurysm, completely out of nowhere. Grant stared at the fountain, water dancing in the afternoon light. She'd had a headache that morning, said she felt weird. I wanted to take her to the hospital, but she insisted it was just stress. We'd been arguing about money, nothing serious, just normal married people stuff. She took some aspirin and said she'd lie down for a bit. The memory was crystal clear, would always be crystal clear. I found her 2 hours later. Mia was at preschool. I came home from work early because something felt off. She was on the bathroom floor. The paramedic said she'd been gone for at least an hour. Lena's hand covered her mouth. God, Grant, I'm so sorry. Everyone's sorry. Doesn't change anything. The bitterness in his voice surprised him. He took a breath. Sorry. I didn't mean... Don't apologize. You're allowed to be angry. They were quiet again. A breeze picked up, scattering leaves across the path. Grant watched them swirl and thought about how much easier it would be if he could just get up and walk away. But Mia's question from last night echoed in his mind. Did Mommy have a family? Now, sitting next to Lena, he had an answer, and didn't that mean something? I have something for you, Grant said abruptly. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his photos until he found what he was looking for. A picture of Elise holding newborn Mia in the hospital, both of them looking tired and radiant and perfect. Here, you should have this. Lena took the phone with trembling hands, her eyes filled with tears that spilled over onto her cheeks. She looked so happy. She was. Mia was everything to her. Grant hesitated, then added, You can have copies of whatever photos you want. I think Elise would want you to have them. Really? Lena looked up at him, hope and disbelief warring on her face. Yeah, it's not much, but it's something. A piece of her life, her history. Our daughter's history, too. Thank you, Lena whispered. You have no idea what that means to me. They spent the next hour sharing stories, filling in gaps, piecing together a picture of a woman who'd lived 2 entirely separate lives, one with her twin in those first 3 years, one after. Lena told Grant about foggy memories of singing songs with someone who looked just like her, of sharing a room in a language only they understood, of a bond that had been severed but never entirely broken. Grant told her about Elise's quirks, how she sang off-key in the shower, how she couldn't cook to save her life but made the best grilled cheese in the world, how she'd cry at insurance commercials but laugh at funerals because that's what the person would want. She sounds amazing, Lena said eventually. She was. Grant's voice was firm. She really was. The sun was starting its descent when Grant finally checked his watch. 4:30. He'd been here 2.5 hours. His mother would be wondering where he was, though she'd never called to check. I should get back, he said. Mia will want dinner soon. Of course, Lena stood when he did. Thank you again, Grant, for this. For giving me a chance to know about my sister. They walked back toward the parking lot together, that careful foot of distance still maintained. At his truck, Grant paused with his hand on the door handle. Would you... He stopped, unsure if this was crossing a line. Would you want to meet Mia? Lena's eyes widened. Are you sure? No, Grant admitted. I'm not sure about anything anymore. But she's part of Elise. And you're part of Elise. Maybe... He trailed off, not knowing how to finish. I'd love to meet her, Lena said softly. Whenever you think she's ready. Whenever you're ready. No pressure. Grant nodded, then climbed into his truck before he could say anything else potentially life-altering. As he pulled away, he watched Lena in his rearview mirror, standing alone in the parking lot, one hand raised in a small wave. The drive home felt shorter than the drive there. Grant's mind was already spinning ahead to the conversation he'd have to have with Mia, with his mother, with himself about what came next. Because something was coming next. He'd opened a door that couldn't be closed now. When he pulled into his driveway, Mia was on the porch, covered in what looked like chocolate frosting and pure joy. "Daddy, we made cookies, and I ate 4, and Grandma said that's too many, but they were really good." Grant scooped her up, frosting and all, holding her tight. "4 cookies, huh? I hope you saved some for me." "Maybe," Mia giggled, then pulled back to study his face with a 6-year-old's unsettling perception. "Are you okay? You look sad." "I'm okay, Princess. Just thinking about your mommy." "Do you miss her?" "Every single day." Mia wrapped her small arms around his neck. "Me too. But at least we have each other, right?" "Right," Grant agreed, his throat tight. "We'll always have each other." That night, after Mia was asleep and his mother had gone home with promises to call tomorrow, Grant sat at the kitchen table with a beer and his phone. He scrolled through photo after photo of Elise, looking for clues he'd missed, signs of a past she'd never talked about. His finger hovered over Lena's number. They'd exchanged contact information before leaving the park. He could text her, say something, keep this strange new connection alive. Instead, he set the phone down and picked up the photo from his wallet, Elise's driver's license picture, the one where she was smiling at something off camera, probably the DMV photographer telling a joke. "I met your sister today," he whispered to the image. "She seems nice. Lost, like she's been searching for something her whole life. I guess she was. She was searching for you." The picture, as always, had no answers, but somehow Grant felt lighter than he had in days. As if by sharing Elise's story with Lena, by acknowledging that his wife had come from somewhere and someone, he'd honored a part of her that had been missing all along. He finished his beer, turned off the lights, and went to bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions. But for tonight, he'd done what he could. He'd opened a door, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The next 2 weeks passed in a strange liminal space where Grant felt like he was living 2 lives simultaneously. There was his normal life, construction sites and packed lunches, parent-teacher conferences and bedtime stories, and then there was this other existence where he exchanged increasingly frequent text messages with a woman who had his dead wife's face. The text started simple enough. Lena asking if he'd had a chance to look through old photos, Grant replying that he'd found some good ones from their wedding. Back and forth, tentative and polite, like 2 people trying to navigate a minefield without a map. But somewhere around day 4, something shifted. Lena sent him a memory she'd suddenly recalled, playing in a sprinkler with someone she was now certain had been Elise, both of them shrieking with laughter while their mother watched from a porch swing. Grant had responded with a story about Elise's hatred of sprinklers as an adult, how she'd claimed they were chaos personified and preferred pools where water stayed contained and predictable. Lena had texted back a string of laughing emojis, then, "That's hilarious." She went from loving chaos to needing control. I wonder what changed her. Grant knew what had changed her. A childhood fracture so deep she'd built walls around her past without even realizing it. The realization had kept him awake that night, staring at his ceiling, mourning not just the woman he'd lost, but the little girl she'd been, who'd lost something too. By day 10, they were texting every evening after Mia went to bed. Nothing deep. Lena sharing stories about her work at the hospital, Grant complaining about a particularly difficult client who kept changing the specifications mid-build. Normal conversation between 2 people who were decidedly not in a normal situation. Marcus noticed first, of course. They were at a job site on a Tuesday afternoon, framing out what would eventually be a sunroom edition, when Grant's phone buzzed for the 3rd time in an hour. Marcus glanced over from where he was measuring a beam. "You gonna get that, or are we pretending you're not grinning at your phone like a teenager?" Grant nearly dropped his hammer. "I'm not grinning." "Brother, you've checked that thing every 5 minutes all day. Either you've taken up gambling or you're talking to someone." Marcus set down his tape measure, giving Grant his full attention. Please tell me it's not that dating app Sarah was trying to get you on. It's Lena, Grant admitted. We've been talking. Talking. Marcus's expression was unreadable. About? Everything. Nothing. She wants to know about Elise and I... Grant paused, trying to articulate something he hadn't fully processed himself. It's easier than I thought it would be, talking to her. She gets it, you know, the loss, the grief. She's been mourning Elise too, in her own way. That's good, man. That's healthy. Marcus's tone was careful, the way it got when he was worried but didn't want to say so. Just be careful, okay? This situation is complicated enough without... Without what? Grant challenged. Without me getting confused? Trust me, I'm already confused as hell. Without anyone getting hurt, Marcus finished quietly, including you, including her, and especially including Mia. The mention of his daughter hit Grant like cold water. Mia, who still didn't know about Lena, who asked about her mother more frequently lately, as if sensing some shift in the universe she couldn't name. That night, after dinner and homework and the usual bedtime routine, Grant sat on the edge of Mia's bed and made a decision that felt both terrifying and inevitable. Princess, I need to talk to you about something, about your mommy. Mia sat up straighter, her stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest. What about mommy? I found out something I didn't know before, something about her family. Grant chose his words carefully, aware that whatever he said next would shape how Mia understood her mother's history. Your mommy had a sister, a twin sister. Mia's eyes went wide. Like two of her? Exactly like two of her. They looked the same, just like twins do. But they got separated when they were very little, and your mommy grew up not knowing she had a sister. That's sad, Mia said, processing this with the straightforward, emotional clarity of childhood. Was she lonely? The question punched Grant in the gut. I don't know, baby. Maybe sometimes. But she had us, and she was really happy with us. Where's the sister now? Mia asked. Is she in heaven too? No, she's alive. Her name is Lena, and she's been looking for your mommy for a long time. She just found out that your mommy passed away. Mia was quiet for a moment, her small face scrunched in concentration. So I have an aunt? A real aunt? You do. Can I meet her? The question came out eager, hopeful. Does she look like mommy? Can she tell me stories about mommy when she was little? Grant's chest tightened. Of course that's what Mia would want. More pieces of her mother, more ways to connect to a woman she was already forgetting around the edges. She does look like mommy, a lot like her. And she'd really like to meet you if that's something you want. Yes! Mia bounced on the bed. Yes, yes, yes! Can she come for dinner? Can we show her my room? Can we... Whoa, slow down. Grant caught his daughter before her enthusiasm could launch her into orbit. Let's take it slow, okay? This is new for everyone. But yeah, we can invite her over. Maybe this weekend? This weekend, Mia agreed solemnly, as if they were signing a treaty. Then, with the lightning-quick mood shifts of a 6-year-old, will she like mac and cheese? Because that's my favorite and Grandma makes the best kind. Grant laughed, despite the knot of anxiety in his stomach. I'm sure she'll love it. After Mia finally fell asleep, Grant sat in his living room and texted Lena before he could overthink it. I told Mia about you. She wants to meet you. Are you free Saturday afternoon? The response came within minutes. Really? Are you sure you're ready for that? Grant stared at the question. Was he ready? Probably not. But Mia's excitement had been so pure, so uncomplicated by the weight of grief and memory that burdened him. Maybe that's what this needed. The simple perspective of a child who just wanted to know her mother's sister. As ready as I'll ever be, he typed back. Come around too? Fair warning, my daughter is 6 and has zero chill when she's excited about something. I have zero chill right now, and I'm 32, so we should get along fine. Thank you, Grant. Really. The next 3 days passed in a blur of anticipation and second-guessing. Grant cleaned the house 3 times, much to his mother's amusement when she stopped by Thursday evening. It's not a date, Grant, Patricia said, watching him vacuum the living room for the second time that day. You don't need to impress her. I know it's not a date, Grant snapped, then immediately felt guilty. Sorry, I'm just nervous. About what? You've already met her. That was different, That was just us. This is bringing her into Mia's life, into our home. What if... He stopped, unable to articulate the tangle of what-ifs crowding his mind. Patricia took the vacuum from him and unplugged it. "Sit down." Grant sat. "You're scared," his mother said bluntly. "Not of Lena, of what she represents. Another connection to Elise, another person Mia might love and potentially lose. But Grant, honey, that's not a reason to keep Mia from knowing her aunt. What if it's too much for her? What if seeing Lena confuses her, makes her think what? That her mother's back? Mia's young, but she's not stupid. She understands death as much as any child can." Patricia's voice gentled. "And maybe having someone who looks like Elise around will help her hold on to those memories a little longer." Grant hadn't thought of it that way. He'd been so focused on protecting Mia from potential pain that he hadn't considered the gift Lena might be, a living connection to a mother Mia was slowly forgetting. Saturday arrived with unseasonably warm October weather, the kind of golden afternoon that made everything feel possible. Mia had changed her outfit 4 times, finally settling on her favorite purple dress with the unicorn on the front. She'd been vibrating with anticipation since breakfast, asking approximately every 10 minutes when Aunt Lena would arrive. "Soon, princess, I promise." But when is soon? Is soon now? Is soon 5 minutes? Grant was explaining the elastic nature of the word soon for the 3rd time when the doorbell rang at precisely 2 o'clock. Mia shrieked and ran for the door. Grant caught her by the shoulder. "Remember what we talked about? We're going to go slow, be gentle, not overwhelm her, right?" "Right," Mia agreed, visibly trying to contain herself. Grant opened the door, and there was Lena, holding a bouquet of sunflowers and looking just as nervous as he felt. She wore jeans and a soft green sweater, her hair in a braid over one shoulder. For a moment, just a moment, Grant's brain supplied Elise, and he had to blink away the automatic correction. But then Lena smiled, and it was her own smile, tinged with uncertainty and hope and fear. "Hi, I brought flowers. I didn't know what else to bring, and I thought..." "They're perfect," Grant said, stepping aside. "Come in." Lena crossed the threshold, and immediately Mia was there, staring up at her with undisguised wonder. "You look like my mommy," she breathed. Lena crouched down to Mia's eye level, her expression infinitely gentle. "I do. Your mommy was my twin sister. That means we were born at the same time and looked a lot alike." "Did you know my mommy?" Mia asked. "When we were very little, yes, but then we got separated and I didn't get to know her when she grew up. That's why I'm so happy to meet you, because you're part of her." Mia processed this with her characteristic seriousness, then announced, "I'm 6 and I'm in 1st grade, and I can read chapter books now. Want to see my room?" Grant started to intervene. Too much too fast. But Lena glanced up at him with a question in her eyes. He nodded, and she let Mia take her hand and pull her down the hallway, chattering at approximately 100 words per minute. He stood alone in the living room, listening to his daughter's excited voice echoing from her bedroom, showing Lena every stuffed animal and drawing and treasure like they were priceless artifacts. And maybe they were. Maybe to Lena, every detail of Mia's life was precious because it was a glimpse into what her sister's daughter had become. Grant put the sunflowers in water and tried not to listen too closely to the conversation happening down the hall, but pieces drifted back anyway. "This is the picture of my mommy at the beach, see? She's holding me and Daddy's taking the picture. She looks so happy, you both do. Daddy says Mommy loved the beach. Do you love the beach?" "I do, actually. I used to go all the time when I was little." "Maybe we could go together sometime. Daddy never wants to go because he says sand gets everywhere and he's grumpy about it." Grant smiled despite himself. He was grumpy about sand. Elise used to tease him mercilessly about his hatred of beach vacations. 20 minutes later, Mia emerged with Lena in tow, both of them looking more relaxed. Mia had apparently decided Lena was officially approved and had moved on to the important question. "Do you like mac and cheese?" "I love mac and cheese," Lena assured her. "Good, because Daddy makes it for lunch on Saturdays, and it's really good. Not as good as Grandma's, but still good." "I heard that," Grant called from the kitchen, where he'd started heating up the aforementioned mac and cheese. "My cooking is perfectly adequate." "Adequate means okay, right?" Mia asked Lena in a stage whisper. It means your daddy's being modest, Lena replied, her eyes crinkling with amusement. Lunch was surprisingly easy. Mia dominated the conversation, which took pressure off Grant and Lena to fill silences. She talked about school and ballet and her best friend Emma, who could do a cartwheel but Mia couldn't yet, but she was practicing. She asked Lena about her job at the hospital and was absolutely fascinated to learn that Lena helped kids who were sick or sad. Like a feelings doctor? Mia asked. Kind of, yeah. I help kids talk about their feelings when something hard is happening. Like when my mommy died, I was really sad. Daddy said that was okay, that being sad is normal. Your daddy's right. Being sad when someone we love dies is very normal. Are you sad about my mommy? The question came out innocent but landed heavy. Lena's eyes filled with tears. She blinked back quickly. I am. I'm sad I didn't get to know her better, but I'm really happy I get to know you. Mia seemed satisfied with this answer and moved on to explaining the complex social dynamics of first-grade recess. Grant caught Lena's eye across the table and mouthed, "Thank you." She nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. After lunch, Mia insisted on showing Lena her treasure box, a plastic container filled with rocks, feathers, and various items she deemed special. As she explained the significance of each treasure with exhaustive detail, Grant watched Lena's face. She listened with genuine interest, asking questions, admiring Mia's finds like they were diamonds and gold. It was such an Elise gesture, that complete focus, that ability to make a child feel heard and valued, that Grant had to look away. The afternoon stretched into early evening. Mia eventually settled in front of the TV with a movie, and Grant made coffee while Lena sat at the kitchen table. They could see Mia from where they sat, her attention fully captured by animated characters. She's wonderful, Lena said softly. She's so much like Elise in some ways. That enthusiasm, that joy. She got that from her mother, Grant agreed. The best parts of her mother. Can I ask you something? Lena turned her coffee mug in her hands. What was Elise like as a mom? I keep imagining what she might have been like, but she was chaos and magic, Grant said without hesitation. She threw the best birthday parties, completely over the top, handmade decorations, themed everything. She couldn't cook, but she could make a grilled cheese that tasted like heaven. She sang lullabies off-key, but with so much love that Mia never cared. She was the mom who let Mia jump in puddles and make messes and finger paint the kitchen cabinets. She sounds perfect. She wasn't perfect. Nobody is. Grant's voice was firm, but not unkind. She was impatient sometimes. She worried too much about things she couldn't control. She held grudges over tiny things and couldn't admit when she was wrong, but she loved Mia with everything in her. That part was perfect. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the movie's soundtrack providing background noise. Then Lena said something that changed everything. I should probably go soon. I don't want to overstay. Actually, Grant found himself saying, we were going to visit Elise's grave tomorrow afternoon. Would you want to come with us? Lena's eyes widened. Are you sure? Mia goes every few weeks, brings flowers, tells her mom about school. It's important to her. Grant met Lena's gaze. I think it might be important for you too, to see where she is, to say goodbye or hello or whatever you need to say. I'd like that very much, Lena whispered. Thank you. After Lena left, Mia was full of reviews and opinions. She's really nice, Daddy, and she smells good, like Mommy used to smell. Kind of like flowers, but also like cookies. Yeah? Grant tucked his daughter into bed, pulling her blankets up to her chin. Did you like meeting her? I loved it. Can she come back? Can she come to my ballet recital next month? Can she... Slow down, princess. We'll see her again soon, I promise. Good. Mia yawned, her eyelids drooping. I think Mommy would be happy we found Aunt Lena. Don't you think so? Grant's throat closed. Yeah, baby, I think she would be. The next afternoon, the three of them stood at Elise's grave in the sunshine. Mia had picked wildflowers from the yard, dandelions and clover, which Elise would have loved more than any expensive bouquet. She arranged them carefully on the headstone, talking to her mother like she always did. Hi, Mommy. I brought someone to meet you. This is Aunt Lena. She's your sister, remember? From when you were little. Grant stepped back, giving Lena space. She knelt by the grave, her hand hovering over the carved letters of Elise's name like she couldn't quite believe they were real. "Hi," she said softly. "I'm sorry it took me so long to find you. I'm sorry I was too late. But I promise I'll take care of your family. I'll tell Mia stories about when we were little. I'll make sure she knows where she comes from, who you were." Tears streamed down her face, and Grant found his own vision blurring. This was grief, raw and real, two different kinds of loss meeting at a marble headstone in an October afternoon. Mia, with the emotional intelligence of children who've lived with loss, took Lena's hand. "It's okay to cry. Daddy and me cry sometimes too. Mommy doesn't mind." Lena pulled Mia into a hug, and Grant watched his daughter, his fierce, wonderful daughter, comfort a woman she'd just met, offering the same grace she'd been shown when grief had swallowed her world whole. They stayed for an hour, Mia telling stories, Lena asking questions, Grant filling in gaps. It felt like healing, like threads being woven together that had been severed too long ago. As they walked back to the car, Mia between them, each holding one of her hands, Grant felt something shift in his chest. Not the sharp pain of grief, but something gentler, something that felt dangerously close to hope. Over the next 2 weeks, Lena became a regular presence in their lives. She came for dinner on Wednesdays, attended Mia's ballet class, showed up at the construction site with coffee for Grant when he texted that he was having a rough day. It was easy, natural, like she'd always been part of their orbit. Too easy, maybe. Too natural. Grant found himself looking forward to her texts, to the way she laughed at his terrible jokes, to the quiet conversations they had after Mia went to bed. He noticed things he shouldn't notice. The way her eyes crinkled when she really smiled. The small scar on her wrist from a childhood accident. The fact that she took her coffee the opposite way Elise had, sweet instead of black. Marcus noticed too. "You're playing with fire, brother," he said one afternoon when Grant checked his phone for the 5th time. "We're friends. That's all. Friends don't look at each other the way you two were looking at each other at Mia's recital. You're imagining things." "Am I?" Marcus fixed him with that penetrating stare. "Grant, I love you, but you need to be honest with yourself about what's happening here. Because from where I'm standing, you're falling for her." "That's insane. She looks like Elise. I'm not falling for her. I'm just what? Confused. Projecting. Brother, I saw how you looked at Elise, and I'm seeing how you look at Lena, and it's not the same. There's something there." Grant wanted to argue, but the words died in his throat. Because maybe Marcus was right. Maybe somewhere between the shared grief and the late-night conversations and watching Lena braid Mia's hair, he'd started seeing her as Lena, not just as Elise's sister, and that terrified him more than anything. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening. Lena had come for dinner, and afterward, while Mia was absorbed in a coloring book, they'd sat on the back porch watching the sunset. The conversation had been easy, comfortable, punctuated by comfortable silences that didn't need filling. "I should probably tell you something," Lena said suddenly, staring out at the darkening sky. "Okay," Grant said cautiously. "I'm starting to feel things I probably shouldn't feel." Her voice was barely audible. "Being here, with you and Mia, it's the first time in years I've felt like I belong somewhere, and I know that's dangerous. I know this situation is complicated enough without me." She trailed off, but Grant understood what she wasn't saying. Because he'd been thinking the same thing, feeling the same pull, fighting the same guilt. "Lena?" "No, let me finish." She turned to face him, her expression fierce and vulnerable. "I need you to know I'm not trying to replace my sister. I'm not trying to step into her shoes or be a substitute or anything like that, but I care about you. And I care about Mia, and every time I think about pulling back, about putting distance between us, I can't." Grant's heart hammered against his ribs. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. And if it's too much, if you need me to step back, I will. I don't want to make this harder for you than it already is." 1,000 responses crowded Grant's mind. He could tell her about the guilt that ate at him every time he caught himself noticing how beautiful she was. He could confess that he dreamed about her now. And in those dreams, she wasn't Elise, she was just Lena. He could admit that when she'd hugged him last week after a particularly hard day, he'd held on longer than necessary and hadn't wanted to let go. But before he could say any of that, Mia's voice called from inside, "Daddy! Aunt Lena! Come see what I drew!" The moment shattered. Lena stood quickly, swiping at her eyes. "I should probably go. It's getting late." "Lena, wait!" But she was already moving, already calling goodbye to Mia, already halfway out the door before Grant could process what had just happened. He stood on the porch alone, the space where she'd been sitting still warm, her words echoing in his mind. "I care about you." Later that night, after Mia was asleep, Grant paced his living room like a caged animal. His phone sat on the coffee table, Lena's name in his recent messages, the cursor blinking in an empty text box. What was he supposed to say? How did you navigate this impossible situation where grief and attraction and family and fear all tangled together until you couldn't tell which emotion was which? He thought about calling Marcus, but he knew what his friend would say. He thought about calling his mother, but he couldn't face her knowing looks. Instead, he sat down with Elise's photo albums again, looking for answers in frozen moments from a life that felt increasingly distant. There was Elise on their honeymoon, laughing at something off camera. Elise pregnant, glowing with joy and fear. Elise with newborn Maya, exhausted and radiant. In every photo, she was so vibrantly alive that it hurt to look at. Grant closed the album and pressed his palms against his eyes. What would Elise want? If she could see him now, confused and guilty and maybe falling for her sister, what would she say? He thought he knew. Elise, who'd loved with her whole heart, who'd wanted everyone around her to be happy, who'd made him promise at their wedding to keep living, keep loving, keep being the best version of yourself even when it's hard. She wouldn't want him frozen in grief. She wouldn't want him to be alone. But would she want him with her sister? That felt like crossing a line too sacred to breach. Grant's phone buzzed. A text from Lena. "I'm sorry if I made things weird tonight. I understand if you need space. Just know that being part of Mia's life, of your lives, has meant everything to me. Whatever happens next, thank you for that gift." His fingers moved before his brain could catch up. "You didn't make things weird. Or maybe you did, but it's a good weird. Can we talk? Really talk?" The response took so long Grant thought maybe she'd gone to sleep. But then, "Tomorrow? After you drop Mia at school? I'll pick you up at 9. "Okay." "Grant? Yeah?" "I'm scared." Grant stared at those two words for a long time before responding. "Me too." He didn't sleep that night, just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to untangle feelings that refused to be categorized neatly. Fear and attraction, guilt and hope, grief and something that might be joy. By the time morning came, Grant had made a decision. He didn't know if it was the right one, didn't know how it would all play out. But he knew he couldn't keep hiding from what was happening, couldn't keep pretending that Lena was just Elise's sister and nothing more. Tomorrow, he would tell her the truth, whatever that truth turned out to be. Morning came too quickly and not fast enough. Grant went through the motions of getting Mia ready for school in a fog, burning the toast, forgetting to pack her lunchbox, standing in front of the open refrigerator for a full minute before remembering what he was looking for. "Daddy, you're being weird," Mia observed as they drove to school. "Just tired, princess." "Are you worried about something?" Grant glanced at his daughter in the rearview mirror. Sometimes her perception terrified him. "Maybe a little." "Is it about Aunt Lena?" The question came out matter-of-fact, like she was asking about the weather. Grant's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What makes you think that?" "Because you smile different when she's around. And you check your phone a lot. And last night you looked sad after she left." 6 years old and already reading him like a book. "I'm not sad, baby. Just thinking about grown-up stuff." "Do you like Aunt Lena?" Mia asked with a child's directness that cut through all pretense. The question hung in the air between them. Grant could deflect, could give some vague answer about how, of course, he liked Aunt Lena, they were friends, but something about the sincerity in his daughter's voice made him want to be honest. "I do like her," he said carefully. "Is that okay with you?" Mia was quiet for a moment, considering. "I think Mommy would want us to be happy, and Aunt Lena makes us happy, right?" "She does," Grant admitted, something in his chest loosening at the simple truth of it. Then it's okay. Mia said it with the absolute certainty of childhood, as if the entire complicated situation could be resolved with that declaration. Miss Emma's mom has a boyfriend now, and Miss Emma says it's nice because her mom smiles more. They pulled up to the school drop-off line. Grant twisted in his seat to face his daughter. Mia, Aunt Lena and I are just friends, but I want you to know that nobody could ever replace your mommy. Nobody would even try. I know, Daddy. Mia unbuckled her seatbelt and leaned forward to kiss his cheek. But having more people to love doesn't mean we love Mommy less. That's what Mrs. Patterson said when Tommy's dad got married again. Grant watched his daughter skip toward the school entrance, her backpack bouncing, completely unburdened by the weight he'd been carrying. When had she gotten so wise? When had she learned that love could expand instead of divide? He sat in the car for a full minute after she disappeared inside, trying to collect himself. Then he pulled out his phone and texted Lena. On my way. The drive to her apartment took 15 minutes through morning traffic. Grant had only been there once before, when he'd picked her up for Mia's ballet recital. It was a modest one-bedroom in a converted Victorian, the kind of place that managed to be both charming and slightly run down. Lena was waiting on the front steps when he pulled up, wearing jeans and a navy sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. She looked as nervous as he felt, which was somehow comforting. She climbed into the passenger seat without a word. They sat in silence for a moment, the engine idling. Where should we go? Grant asked finally. Somewhere we can talk without interruption. Somewhere neutral. The park? Too many memories. Lena's voice was soft. That's where we first really talked. Coffee shop? Too public. She turned to look at him, her blue eyes, Elise's eyes. His brain still insisted on noting, searching his face. Can we just drive? Sometimes it's easier to talk when you don't have to make eye contact. So Grant drove. Out of the city, onto the highway that cut through rolling hills turning gold and red with autumn. Neither of them spoke for the first 10 minutes, the radio filling the silence with some indie folk song about second chances and new beginnings. Finally, Lena broke the silence. I've been thinking about what I said last night. Me too. I should clarify something. When I said I cared about you, I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable or put pressure on anything. I just needed to be honest. Grant merged into the right lane, buying himself a few seconds to formulate a response. You didn't make me uncomfortable. You made me face something I've been avoiding, which is that I care about you too. The words came out easier than he expected, and I feel guilty as hell about it. Lena was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was thick with emotion. Do you think you only care about me because I look like her? It was the question Grant had been asking himself for weeks, the one that kept him awake at night, analyzing every feeling, every moment of attraction. I don't know, he admitted. At first, yeah. Seeing you was like seeing a ghost. But now when I look at you, I see you. I see the way you bite your lip when you're thinking. I see how you always order your coffee too hot and then spend 10 minutes blowing on it. I see someone who's patient with my daughter, who makes her laugh, who's teaching her to braid her own hair because I'm hopeless at it. I see Lena, not Elise, not a replacement or a substitute or whatever my guilty conscience wants to call you. A tear rolled down Lena's cheek. But I loved Elise. I love her still. I always will. And the idea of moving forward with her sister feels like I'm crossing some sacred boundary, like I'm betraying both of you. I understand. Lena wiped her eyes. I feel it too. Every time I think about you, about us, about the possibility of something more, I feel like I'm disrespecting my sister's memory, like I'm taking something that wasn't meant for me. Grant pulled off at the next exit, following signs to a scenic overlook he'd passed 100 times, but never stopped at. The parking lot was empty, just a small pull-off with a view of the valley below, trees stretching to the horizon in a riot of autumn colors. He turned off the engine and finally looked at Lena directly. Really looked at her, not just glancing and looking away. Her eyes were red from crying, her hands twisted together in her lap. She looked vulnerable and strong and scared and hopeful all at once. What do we do? Grant asked. How do we navigate this? I don't know. I've never been in this situation before. A hint of dark humor crept into her voice. There's not exactly a handbook for falling for your dead twin sister's husband. If there was, I'd buy it. Maybe get the audiobook version too. Lena laughed, a wet, shaky sound that was somehow the most beautiful thing Grant had heard in weeks. They sat there, the morning sun streaming through the windshield, warming the cab of the truck. Can I tell you something? Lena asked. Something I've been too afraid to say? Yeah. These last few weeks, being part of your life, part of Mia's life, it's been the happiest I've been in years. Maybe ever. She stared out at the view, her profile backlit by sunshine. I've spent so long searching for something I didn't even know I'd lost. And then I found it, but it was too late. I found out my sister was dead, and I'd never get to know her, never get to have that relationship I dreamed about. Grant listened, afraid to interrupt, afraid to break whatever confession was unfolding. But then I met you, and Mia, and I got to know Elise through you, through your stories, through the family she created. And it was like finding pieces of her scattered everywhere. In Mia's laugh, in the photos on your fridge, in the way you talk about her. Lena's voice cracked, and somewhere along the way, I stopped just looking for my sister. I started looking forward to seeing you, to hearing about your day, to stupid inside jokes and comfortable silences, and all these little moments that had nothing to do with Elise and everything to do with us. Lena, I'm not done. She turned to face him, and the intensity in her eyes took his breath away. I know this is complicated. I know we're probably breaking every rule about grief and family and appropriate boundaries, but Grant, I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose you and Mia. Even if all we ever are is friends, even if nothing romantic ever happens between us, I need you in my life. Grant's throat was tight. You're not going to lose us. How do you know? Because I don't want to lose you either. The admission felt like stepping off a cliff. These past weeks, you've become important, not just as Elise's sister, not just as Mia's aunt, as Lana, as this woman who makes terrible jokes and cries at Disney movies and somehow knows exactly what to say when I'm having a bad day. So what does that mean? Lena's voice was barely a whisper. Where do we go from here? Grant didn't have an answer. Part of him wanted to reach across the center console, take her hand, pull her close, and damn the consequences. But another part, the part that still wore his wedding ring, that still said goodnight to Elise's photo every evening, that part held him back. I think, he said slowly, we need to be honest about everything. No hiding, no pretending things are simpler than they are. Okay, honest. Lena took a shaky breath. I'm terrified. Of this, of us, of what people will think. But I'm more terrified of walking away and spending the rest of my life wondering what if. I'm terrified too, of moving too fast, of dishonoring Elise's memory, of confusing grief and guilt with something real. Grant paused. But I'm also terrified of being so paralyzed by fear that I miss something good, something real. They sat with that truth hanging between them, fragile and enormous. A car pulled into the overlook, a young couple who climbed out laughing, taking selfies with the valley as a backdrop. Grant watched them, remembering being that carefree, that certain about love. My mother told me something after Elise died, Grant said. She said grief isn't something you get over, it's something you carry, and that carrying it doesn't mean you can't also carry hope, or joy, or even new love, that the heart has infinite capacity if we let it. Was she right? I don't know yet, but I think she might be. Grant finally reached across the console, his hand hovering near Lena's. Can I? She took his hand before he could finish the question. Her fingers intertwined with his, and it felt both familiar and entirely new. Not Elise's hand, smaller, her fingers longer, her grip different. Lena's hand, as just Lena. They sat like that for a long time, watching the valley, feeling the warmth of connection and the weight of complication. Eventually, Grant checked his watch and sighed. I have a meeting at the site at 11, and I have a client at noon. Neither of them moved to leave. Lena? Yeah? I don't know what this is or what it becomes, but I need you to know If we do this, if we try this, we go slow, really slow, for Mia's sake and for ours. I can do slow, Lena said, a small smile playing at her lips. I've waited my whole life to find my sister. I think I can be patient about this too. The drive back to the city felt different, lighter somehow. They talked about small things, Mia's upcoming parent-teacher conference, a difficult case Lena was working at the hospital, Marcus's latest dating disaster. Normal conversation between two people getting to know each other, unburdened by the weight of confession. Grant dropped Lena at her apartment with a promise to call later. As he watched her walk up the steps, something Marcus had said weeks ago echoed in his mind. You're falling for her. He'd denied it then, but sitting here now, watching Lena pause at her door to wave, Grant could no longer pretend. He was falling. The question was whether he had the courage to let himself land. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Grant went through the motions at work, made decisions about lumber and permits and timelines, but his mind was elsewhere. Marcus noticed immediately. You talked to her? His friend asked during their lunch break, sitting on a stack of lumber and unwrapping sandwiches. Yeah. And? And it's complicated. Marcus snorted. When is anything with you simple? What'd she say? Grant told him, leaving out the most intimate details but giving enough for Marcus to understand. His friend listened without interrupting, occasionally nodding or making noncommittal sounds. So you're doing this, Marcus said when Grant finished. You're actually going to try dating your dead wife's twin sister. Hearing it stated so bluntly made Grant wince. When you say it like that, how else should I say it? Brother, I'm not judging. I'm just making sure you've thought this through, really thought it through. I haven't thought about anything else for weeks. Okay, then answer me this. If Lena didn't look like Elise, would you still be interested? The question landed like a punch. Grant opened his mouth to answer, then closed it. Would he? How could he possibly separate physical attraction from the shared grief, from the connection through Mia, from all the complicated threads binding them together? I don't know, he admitted, but I know that when I'm with her, I feel less alone. I know that she makes me laugh. I know that watching her with Mia makes something in my chest feel warm instead of broken. Is that enough? Only you can answer that, man. Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. But whatever you decide, I've got your back. Just promise me you'll be careful. With your heart, with Mia's heart, and with Lena's too. I promise. That night, after tucking Mia into bed, she'd had a million stories about her day at school and 0 questions about Aunt Lena. Thankfully, Grant found himself standing in his bedroom, looking at the photos on his dresser. Elise smiled out at him from multiple frames, frozen in happiness. He'd kept everything exactly as it was the day she died. Her jewelry box on the left side of the dresser. Her favorite sweater still hanging in the closet. Her books on the nightstand, bookmarks still holding her place in stories she'd never finish. For 3 years, this room had been a shrine, a testament to love and loss, preserved in amber. Grant picked up his favorite photo, their wedding day, Elise in her dress, him in his suit, both of them grinning like idiots who thought they had forever. He traced her face with his finger, whispering words he'd said 1,000 times to her memory. I don't know what I'm doing, Elise. I don't know if this is okay. If you'd understand. If you'd be angry or hurt or... His voice broke. I need a sign. Something to tell me I'm not making a terrible mistake. The photo, as always, offered no answers. But as Grant set it back down, his eye caught on something he'd never noticed before, or had forgotten noticing. In the background of the shot, barely visible, was the photographer's assistant, a woman. With dark hair and a bright smile, holding a reflector, her face partially obscured but her profile clear enough to see. She looked nothing like Elise, nothing like Lena. Just a random person captured in the background of their moment. And suddenly, Grant understood. Elise wasn't defined by her face, by her physical features. She was defined by her kindness, her laughter, her capacity for love. Those were the things that mattered, the things that lived on in Mia, in Grant's memories, in the way she'd changed everyone who knew her. Lena might share Elise's face, but she was her own person, with her own quirks and fears and dreams. And what Grant felt for her, the warmth, the connection, the possibility, that wasn't about physical resemblance. It was about two broken people finding comfort in each other, finding something that felt like healing. Or maybe he was just rationalizing, justifying the unjustifiable because he was lonely and Lena was there. Grant's phone buzzed with a text from Lena. "Thank you for today, for being honest, for not running away. I know this is scary, but I think maybe scary is okay sometimes." He stared at the message for a long moment before responding. "My daughter told me this morning that having more people to love doesn't mean we love less. 6 years old and wiser than me. She's pretty remarkable. Wonder where she gets it. Definitely not from me. I'm making this up as I go. Aren't we all?" Grant smiled despite himself. Then, making a decision that felt both monumental and simple, he typed, "Are you free Saturday? Just you and me. An actual date, if you want." The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "I'd like that." "But Grant?" "Yeah? I'm really scared. Me too. But my very wise daughter also said that sometimes scary is worth it. She really is wise. She gets it from her mother." A pause, then, "Which one?" The question hung there, loaded with meaning. Grant thought about deflecting, about making a joke, about changing the subject. But he'd promised honesty. "Both," he typed. "She gets it from both of you." Over the next few days, something shifted in Grant's world. It wasn't a dramatic change, no lightning bolt moment of clarity, no sudden resolution of guilt and grief, but he found himself putting away some of Elise's things, not throwing them out, not erasing her from the house, just making space. Her sweater went into a memory box. Her jewelry, carefully packed away for Mia when she was older. Her books, donated to the library with a small note, in memory of Elise Mercer, who loved stories. His mother noticed when she came by Thursday evening. She stood in his bedroom doorway, taking in the subtle changes, then pulled Grant into a hug without saying a word. "I'm not forgetting her," Grant said into his mother's shoulder. "I know, honey. You're just learning to live again. There's a difference." "Is it okay? What I'm doing with Lena?" Patricia pulled back, holding him at arm's length to look at his face. "Do you love her?" "I don't know. Maybe. Is that insane?" "Love is always a little insane," his mother smiled. "But Grant, listen to me. Elise would want you to be happy. She'd want Mia to have a full life with people who care about her. And yes, the situation is unusual, but unusual doesn't mean wrong. What if people judge? What if they think I'm replacing Elise or being disrespectful to her memory?" "Then those people can mind their own business," Patricia said firmly. "You get one life, Grant, one chance to find happiness. Don't waste it worrying about what other people think." Saturday arrived too quickly. Grant changed his shirt 3 times before settling on the blue button-down Lena had once complimented. He made arrangements for Mia to spend the day with his mother, enduring his daughter's knowing looks and her cheerful, "have fun on your date with Aunt Lena." "It's not," Grant started, then stopped, because it was. It absolutely was a date. He picked Lena up at 6. She wore a simple black dress and looked nervous and beautiful, and nothing like Elise, who'd never worn black because she said it was too serious. "Hi," she said, climbing into the truck. "Hi." Grant's mouth was dry. "You look great." "Thanks. You too." She fidgeted with her purse strap. "So where are we going?" "I thought we could try that new Italian place on Riverside, if that's okay. If it's not too weird since the restaurant where we—" "Grant," Lena put her hand on his arm. "It's perfect. We're rewriting that story, right?" "Right. Rewriting." The restaurant was cozy and dimly lit, with checkered tablecloths and the smell of garlic and fresh bread. They were seated at a corner table, relatively private, which Grant appreciated. The last thing he needed was running into someone he knew and having to explain why he was on a date with someone who looked exactly like his late wife. They ordered wine. Lena, red, Grant, white, and fell into easy conversation about work and Mia and a book they'd both recently read. It felt natural, comfortable, like they'd been doing this forever. But underneath the ease was a current of awareness, of possibility, of 2 people carefully feeling their way towards something neither could quite name. "Can I ask you something?" Lena said halfway through their entrees. "Always. Do you ever—" He paused, choosing her words carefully. "Do you ever wish I didn't look like her? That this could just be simple?" Grant set down his fork, considering. Sometimes. But then I think about how we met, how improbable this whole thing is. If you didn't look like Elise, I never would have panicked at that blind date. You never would have told Marcus about your search. We might have just had a nice dinner and never seen each other again. So you're saying fate works in mysterious ways? I'm saying maybe the universe has a twisted sense of humor. Grant smiled. But yeah, maybe fate too. I used to believe in fate. Then my sister died before I could find her, and I stopped believing in much of anything. Lena's voice was soft. But being here with you, with Mia, it's making me believe again, in something, even if I don't know what yet. They talked until the restaurant started closing down around them, the staff politely hovering with the check. Grant paid despite Lena's protests, and they walked out into the cool November night. I don't want tonight to end, Lena admitted as they reached his truck. It doesn't have to. Grant's heart hammered. We could go for a walk? By the waterfront? So they walked, side by side, close enough that their hands occasionally brushed. The waterfront was quiet this time of night, just the soft lap of water against the dock and the distant sound of traffic. String lights from a nearby restaurant cast a warm glow over everything. Grant? Lena stopped walking, turning to face him. Yeah? I know we said we'd go slow. I know this is complicated and scary and probably a terrible idea. She stepped closer. But I really want to kiss you right now. Grant's breath caught. Every rational thought in his mind screamed warnings. Too fast. Too soon. What about Elise? What about Mia? What about the 1,000 ways this could go wrong? But louder than all of that was a single truth. He wanted to kiss her too. Lena, it's okay if you're not ready, she said quickly. I just needed to be honest about what I'm feeling. Grant looked at her, really looked at her. At Lena Ward, social worker and lost twin, woman who'd searched for her sister and found a family instead. Woman who made his daughter laugh and his heart feel less heavy. Woman who was brave enough to voice what he'd been too afraid to admit. I'm ready, he whispered. The kiss was soft, tentative. Both of them afraid of breaking something fragile. Lena's hands came up to rest on his chest, and Grant's found her waist, pulling her closer. She tasted like wine and possibility, and when they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Grant felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. Pure, uncomplicated hope. Wow, Lena breathed. Yeah. Grant rested his forehead against hers. Wow. They stood there in the glow of the string lights, the water lapping beside them, two people who'd found each other in the most impossible way. And for the first time since that terrible day 3 years ago, Grant thought maybe, just maybe, his heart knew the difference between grief and love. The kiss changed everything and nothing all at once. Grant drove Lena home in a daze, their hands intertwined across the center console, both of them grinning like teenagers who'd just discovered something revolutionary. When he dropped her at her apartment, they kissed again, longer this time, deeper, until Lena pulled back laughing. Slow, remember? We said slow. Right, slow. Grant couldn't stop smiling. This is me being slow. If this is slow, I'm terrified of what fast looks like. But she was smiling too, her eyes bright in the streetlight. Good night, Grant. Good night. He watched her climb the steps, waiting until she was safely inside before driving home. The house was dark when he arrived. His mother had put Mia to bed hours ago and left a note on the kitchen counter. She asked about you and Lena approximately 47 times. I told her to ask you herself. Good luck. Love, Mom. Grant climbed the stairs to Mia's room, peeking in to find her fast asleep, her stuffed rabbit clutched under one arm. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her breathe, thinking about how much his life had changed in just a few months. But when he finally crawled into his own bed, guilt came creeping back like an unwelcome visitor. He'd kissed Lena. He'd wanted to kiss Lena, and some part of him felt like he'd betrayed Elise, crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Grant reached for his phone, pulling up the last photo he'd taken of Elise, her holding newborn Mia in the hospital, both of them exhausted and radiant. He stared at it for a long time, waiting for some sign, some feeling that would tell him whether what he was doing was right or wrong. The photo, as always, remained silent. Sleep didn't come easy. When Grant finally drifted off around 3 in the morning, he dreamed of Elise. Not a nightmare, but not quite peaceful either. They were in their old apartment, the one they'd lived in when they first got married. Elise was packing boxes, moving methodically through rooms. "Where are you going?" Dream Grant asked. "I'm not going anywhere," Dream Elise said, smiling that smile he'd fallen in love with. "But you are. You're moving forward, Grant. Finally." "I don't know if I can." "Yes, you can." She walked over, cupping his face in her hands the way she used to. "You're already doing it, and I'm so proud of you." "But what about you? What about us?" "We'll always be us. Nothing changes that. But Grant—" Her voice grew softer, more distant. "I'm gone. I've been gone, and you've been so busy holding on to me that you forgot how to hold on to life. I don't want to forget you. You won't. You couldn't if you tried. I'm in every part of you, every part of Mia, but that doesn't mean you have to stop living." Grant woke with tears on his face and his phone buzzing on the nightstand. 6:30 in the morning, Mia's alarm going off in her room. He wiped his eyes and went to wake his daughter, carrying the strange piece of the dream with him. Over breakfast, Mia studied him with those two knowing eyes. "You look happy, Daddy." "I had a good night." "With Aunt Lena?" The question was innocent, hopeful. Grant set down his coffee cup. "Yeah, with Aunt Lena. Is that okay?" "I told you already, silly. It's okay." Mia poured an alarming amount of syrup on her pancakes. "Are you boyfriend and girlfriend now?" The question was so direct, so childishly simple, that Grant almost laughed. "Maybe. We're figuring it out." "Okay. Can she come to my ballet recital next month? It's really important, and I want her there." "I'll ask her." "Good." Mia nodded, satisfied, and returned her attention to drowning her breakfast in syrup. If only adult relationships were that simple. Ask a question, get an answer, move on. But Grant was learning that sometimes children understood things adults overcomplicated. Love didn't have to be tangled in guilt and fear. It could just be love. The next few weeks were a careful dance of moving forward while honoring the past. Grant and Lena went on proper dates, movies and dinners, a hiking trip that left them both sore and laughing. They held hands in public, kissed goodnight on her doorstep, talked for hours about everything and nothing. But they also maintained boundaries. Lena didn't stay over when Mia was home. They didn't rush into labels or declarations. They just existed together, learning each other, building something new on a foundation of shared grief and tentative hope. Marcus remained skeptical, but supportive. "Just promise me you're in this for the right reasons," he said one afternoon at the job site. "What are the right reasons?" "That you're choosing her because of who she is, not because of who she reminds you of." Grant had thought about that question every day since their first kiss, and every day the answer became clearer. Yes, Lena looked like Elise, but she laughed differently, fuller, louder. She took her coffee sweet instead of black. She was patient where Elise had been impulsive, cautious where Elise had been bold. She was her own person, distinct and separate, and that's who Grant was falling for. "I'm choosing her because she makes me want to be better," Grant said finally. "Because she's kind and patient and somehow sees past all my broken pieces to something worth caring about. Because when I'm with her, I feel like I can breathe again." Marcus studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, that's good enough for me." But not everyone was as understanding. The breaking point came 6 weeks after that first kiss, at Mia's ballet recital. Grant had invited Lena, of course, and she'd shown up early to help with Mia's hair and makeup. They'd been sitting together in the audience, Grant's arm around Lena's shoulders, when a voice behind them made Grant's blood run cold. "Grant Mercer. Is that you?" He turned to find Sarah Hendricks, Elise's best friend from college, someone Grant hadn't seen since the funeral. Sarah's eyes went from Grant to Lena, her expression shifting from surprise to shock to something that looked like betrayal. "Sarah, hi, I didn't know you were What the hell, Grant?" Sarah's voice was low but fierce. "What the hell is this?" Lena had gone rigid beside him. Grant could feel the tension radiating off her, could see people starting to turn and stare. "Can we talk about this outside?" Grant asked quietly. "I think we need to." They stood, Grant catching his mother's eye across the auditorium. Patricia gave him a concerned look but nodded. She'd watch for Mia's performance. Grant and Lena followed Sarah into the lobby, where she whirled on them with barely contained fury. Please tell me you're not dating Elise's twin sister. Please tell me I'm misunderstanding what I just saw. Sarah, do you have any idea how messed up this is? Sarah's voice rose. How disrespectful to Elise's memory. She's been dead 3 years, Grant. 3 years and you're already replacing her with a carbon copy? That's not what this is, Grant said, his own anger rising. And you have no right to... I was her best friend. I have every right to be upset that you're parading her replacement around at your daughter's ballet recital, like nothing's wrong. I'm not a replacement. Lena's voice was quiet but firm. She'd been silent until now, but something in Sarah's words had clearly struck a nerve. I'm her sister, her twin sister who never got to know her, and I'm not trying to take her place or erase her memory. I'm just what? Just conveniently falling for her husband? Sarah's laugh was bitter. That's not suspicious at all. Sarah, that's enough. Grant stepped between them, his voice hard. You don't know the whole story. You don't know how any of this happened or what we've been through. So unless you want to actually have a conversation instead of hurling accusations, I think we're done here. You know what? You're right. We're done. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. Elise deserved better than this. She deserved better than you forgetting her the second someone with her face showed up. The words landed like physical blows. Grant opened his mouth to respond, but Sarah was already walking away, her heels clicking on the polished floor. In the silence that followed, Lena turned to Grant, her face pale. Maybe she's right. She's not. Maybe I am a replacement. Maybe this whole thing is wrong. Lena's voice shook. Maybe we're both just so desperate to fill the hole Elise left that we convinced ourselves. Stop. Grant grabbed her hands. Look at me. Sarah is hurting. She lost her best friend, and seeing us together brought all that grief back. But that doesn't make her right. How do you know? Tears spilled down Lena's cheeks. How do you know you're not just seeing Elise when you look at me? How do you know any of this is real? Grant could hear Mia's ballet class being called to the stage inside. In minutes, his daughter would perform, looking for him in the audience. He had seconds to say something that mattered, something that would either salvage this or watch it crumble. I know, he said, pulling Lena close, because my heart knows the difference. I loved Elise. I will always love Elise. But when I kiss you, I'm not kissing her ghost. When I hold you, I'm not pretending you're someone else. When I imagine a future, I see you, Lena Ward, social worker, terrible cook, woman who cries at insurance commercials but laughs at horror movies. You, not her. But I look like her. You do. And at first, that was all I could see. But now? Grant tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. Now I see you. The way you bite your thumbnail when you're nervous. The scar on your wrist from falling off your bike when you were 8. The fact that you sing off key but on completely different songs than Elise did. Every single thing that makes you you, not her. Lena searched his face, looking for doubt, for hesitation. Whatever she found there must have satisfied her because she sagged against him, burying her face in his chest. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too. But I'm more scared of losing you because we let other people's opinions matter more than what we know is true. They stood there for a long moment, holding each other in the lobby while muffled applause echoed from inside. Then Lena pulled back, wiping her eyes. We should get back. Mia will be looking for us. They returned to their seats just as Mia's group took the stage. Grant's daughter spotted them immediately, her face breaking into a huge grin. She waved enthusiastically, completely against ballet etiquette, and Lena waved back, laughing despite her tears. Patricia leaned over during the performance. Everything okay? Getting there, Grant murmured. After the recital, they took Mia out for ice cream, and she chattered nonstop about every step, every turn, every moment. She was oblivious to the tension earlier, wrapped up in 6-year-old excitement, and Grant was grateful for it. That night, after tucking Mia in, Grant found Lena sitting on his back porch, staring at the stars. He handed her a beer and sat beside her. Sarah called me, Lena said quietly. After we got home, she apologized. Grant raised his eyebrows. That was quick. She said she talked to your mom. Patricia apparently gave her an earful about minding her own business and not judging situations she doesn't understand. A small smile crossed Lena's face. Your mother is fierce. She learned from raising 3 boys. You don't survive that without developing a thick skin and a sharp tongue. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, the night air cool but not cold, the stars bright above them. Grant? Lena's voice was tentative. What are we doing? Really? What do you mean? I mean long term. Where does this go? Because we can't keep existing in this limbo forever. At some point, we have to decide if we're building something real or if we're just what? Just 2 people holding on to each other because we're both scared of being alone. Grant turned to face her fully. Is that what you think this is? I don't know what to think anymore. Today, with Sarah, it made me realize that not everyone is going to understand. Not everyone is going to approve. And if we keep going down this path, there will be more Sarahs, more judgment, more people questioning our choices. Let them question. Easy for you to say. You have Mia, your mom, Marcus, people who support you no matter what. I have a few friends from work and a therapist who thinks I'm working through complicated grief. Lena's voice cracked. What if they're all right? What if this is just complicated grief? Grant set down his beer and took both of Lena's hands in his. Do you love me? The question hung in the air between them, enormous and terrifying. Lena stopped, started again. I think so, but how do I know it's real? How do I know I'm not just… Lena. Grant's voice was firm. I'm going to ask you again, and I want you to answer with your gut, not your head. Do you love me? She met his eyes, and he saw fear and hope and vulnerability all tangled together. Yes, she whispered. God help me, yes. Then that's all that matters. Everything else, the judgment, the complications, the fear, we'll figure it out together. But I need you to know something. Grant took a deep breath. I love you too. Not because you look like Elise, not because you're a connection to her, but because you're you. Because you make me laugh and challenge me and make me want to be better. Because you're patient with my daughter and kind to my mother and put up with my terrible jokes. They really are terrible, Lena said, but she was crying again, smiling through her tears. I know, but you laugh anyway, and that's how I know this is real. They kissed there under the stars, and it felt like a promise, like a commitment to whatever came next. When they finally pulled apart, Lena rested her head on Grant's shoulder. What do we tell Mia? She asked. The truth. That we care about each other, that we're trying to build something together, that loving me doesn't mean she's forgetting her mother. And if people judge, then they judge. But Lena, Grant tilted her face up to meet his eyes. I've spent 3 years living in the past, treating my present like something to endure until I could rejoin Elise somehow. You taught me that I can honor her memory while still building a future. That's not betrayal. That's survival. That's living. Lena kissed him again, soft and sweet, and Grant felt the last of his guilt begin to dissolve. Not disappear entirely. He knew it would always be there. A small voice asking if he was being disloyal. But it was quieter now, drowned out by something stronger. Love. Hope. The possibility of happiness. Over the next few months, they built their life carefully, deliberately. Lena started staying over more often, her toothbrush appearing in Grant's bathroom, her clothes migrating to his closet. Mia adjusted with the ease of children, accepting Lena's presence as natural, right. There were hard moments. The first time Lena slept in Grant's bed, Elise's bed, he woke at 3 a.m. in a panic, convinced he'd made a terrible mistake. But Lena held him through it, whispering that it was okay, that grief didn't follow a schedule or a rule book. There was the day Mia called Lena Mom, accidentally, then burst into tears, terrified she'd betrayed her real mother. Lena had held her, telling her that love multiplies, it doesn't divide, and that loving her didn't mean forgetting Elise. There were the awkward conversations with extended family, the whispered judgments at school events, the knowing looks from people who thought they understood but couldn't possibly. But there were beautiful moments too. Lena teaching Mia to braid hair, the three of them laughing as they created increasingly elaborate styles. Sunday morning pancakes where they took turns being chef and arguing over whether chocolate chips were an acceptable breakfast food. Movie nights curled up on the couch, Mia between them, all three feeling like family. 6 months after their first date, Grant took Lena back to Elise's grave. Mia was at a friend's house, and they had the cemetery to themselves in the late afternoon sun. Lena knelt by the headstone, placing fresh flowers, sunflowers, Elise's favorite. "Hi," she said softly. "I'm sorry it took me so long to come back. I wasn't sure if it was okay, if I was intruding, but Grant said you'd understand." She paused, as if waiting for a response. Grant stood back, giving her space. "I'm taking care of them," Lena continued, "your husband and your daughter. And I know I can never replace you. I would never try. But I'm loving them the best I know how. I hope that's okay. I hope," her voice broke, "I hope wherever you are, you know that they're happy, that we're all trying to be happy." Grant moved closer, putting his hand on Lena's shoulder. She looked up at him, tears streaming down her face, and he knelt beside her. "Elise," he said to the headstone, "I need to tell you something. I'm going to ask Lena to marry me." Lena gasped, her head whipping toward him. "What?" "Not right now, not today, but soon." Grant kept his eyes on Elise's name carved in marble. "And I needed to tell you first. Needed to make sure you knew that this doesn't erase what we had. You were my first love. You gave me Mia. You taught me what it meant to build a life with someone. I'll carry that forever." He turned to Lena, taking her hand. "But I'm ready to build a new life now. A different life. And I want to build it with Lena. She's not replacing you, Elise. She's just continuing the story. Our story. In a way neither of us expected." They sat there in silence, the three of them, two living, one gone, connected by love and loss and the strange, beautiful way life moved forward even when you thought it couldn't. A year after their first kiss, Grant proposed. Not at a fancy restaurant or on a beach at sunset, but in their kitchen on a Tuesday morning. Mia was at school, and they were making breakfast, and Lena was laughing at something stupid Grant had said, and suddenly he couldn't wait another moment. "Marry me." Lena turned, spatula in hand, batter dripping on the floor. "What?" "Marry me." Grant dropped to one knee right there among the breakfast chaos. "I know this is insane. I know it's complicated and unconventional and probably every kind of weird. But I love you, Mia loves you, and I want to spend the rest of my life building something beautiful with you." Tears spilled down Lena's cheeks. "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, yes, yes." They were married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the same church where Grant had married Elise. Some people whispered, but Grant didn't care. His mother cried happy tears. Marcus stood as best man and gave a speech about second chances and the courage it takes to love again. And Mia, in her flower girl dress, declared it the best day ever, approximately 17 times. During the vows, Grant did something unconventional. He pulled out a second ring, Elise's wedding band, which he'd kept in his dresser drawer for 3 years. "This ring belonged to my first wife," he said, his voice steady, "Lena's sister. And with your permission, I'd like to give it to our daughter when she's old enough, because Elise deserves to be part of this family, part of this story. She always will be." Lena nodded, tears streaming. "She's part of all of us. Always." Years passed. They had another child, a son they named Elliot, with Elise's middle name as his. Mia grew into a teenager who remembered her mother in fragments, but knew her through stories, through Lena's memories, and Grant's love. She understood she'd been given a gift. 2 mothers, in a way. One who'd brought her into the world, and one who'd helped raise her. Grant kept photos of Elise throughout the house, alongside pictures of his new family. They visited her grave every year on her birthday, bringing flowers and updates, talking to her like she was still part of their lives. Because she was. Always would be. One evening, when Mia was 15 and Elliot was 7, they sat around the dinner table, Grant and Lena and their children, and Mia asked the question she'd been too young to ask years before. "Dad, how did you know? How did you know it was okay to love Lena when you still loved Mom? Grant looked at his daughter, now almost a woman, and then at Lena, who'd become the center of his world in ways he'd never expected. He thought about all the years, all the grief and guilt and fear, all the moments of doubt and breakthrough. "Your mother told me something once," he said finally, "on our wedding day. She said love doesn't run out, it grows. And I didn't understand what she meant until I met Lena. I thought my heart was full, that there was no room for anyone else. But your mom was right. Love multiplies, it expands. And choosing to love Lena didn't mean loving your mother less. It meant my heart grew big enough to hold both." Mia nodded, processing this. "Do you think Mom would be happy about all of this?" Grant exchanged a glance with Lena, and she nodded, giving him permission to speak the truth they'd both come to believe. "I think your mother would be proud," he said. "Proud that we didn't let grief destroy us. Proud that we found a way to honor her while still building something new. Proud that you have a family full of love, even if it looks different than she imagined." "I think so too," Mia said softly. Then, with the resilience of youth, "Can we have dessert now?" They laughed, the moment of heaviness lifting, and Elliot ran to get ice cream from the freezer. Grant watched his family, this beautiful, complicated, unexpected family, and felt something he'd thought he'd lost forever. Peace. Pure, uncomplicated peace. That night, after the children were asleep, Grant and Lena stood in their backyard under the stars, the same stars that had witnessed their first real conversation about love. "Do you ever regret it?" Grant asked. "Choosing this? Choosing us?" Lena turned to him, her face illuminated by moonlight, and smiled. Not Elisa's smile, Lena's smile, warm and sure and entirely her own. "Not for a second." "You taught me something, Grant Mercer. You taught me that family isn't just about blood. It's about showing up. It's about choosing each other every single day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." "I learned that from you," Grant said, pulling her close. "Then we learned it together." They stood there in their backyard, in the home they'd built, surrounded by the life they'd created from grief and hope and impossible coincidence. And Grant understood finally, truly, what Elise had meant all those years ago on their wedding day. Love doesn't run out, it grows. He'd loved Elise. He loved her still, would carry her in his heart until his last breath. But he also loved Lena, differently, separately, completely. Two loves, two women, two chapters of one life. And somewhere, he liked to think, Elise was smiling. Not because she'd been forgotten or replaced, but because her sister had found what she'd lost, and her husband had found his way back to living, and her daughter had grown up surrounded by love. That was her last wish, after all. Not that he forget her, but that he keep living. And with Lena beside him, their children sleeping upstairs, and his heart finally at peace with loving both the past and the present, Grant had kept his promise. He was living. Truly, fully, completely living. And it was enough.